This is the boy who made NASA shut down its entire network for 3 weeks. At just 15 years old, Jonathan James did something no hacker had ever done before. He infiltrated NASA's most secure systems and downloaded $1.7 million worth of software that controlled life support for astronauts in space. When a joint task force of NASA, the FBI, and the Department of Defense finally tracked him down, they discovered something about this teenager that changed everything. This is the story of how curiosity changed cybersecurity forever, and how the government he exposed would ultimately destroy him. It was the late 1990s, and science fiction was at its peak. But while this story may sound like it would be the perfect addition to that era's list of blockbusters, it's actually far from fiction. Amid the whirring dial-up modems and early chaos of the internet, this young man managed to access the digital halls of NASA, invisible and precise. This wasn't a prank, nor was it lucky guesswork. James had actually executed what would become known as one of the most notorious hacks in US history. Thanks to his prodigious understanding of systems that most adults even today can't so much as pronounce, along with remarkable patience and skill, he changed the entire landscape of the digital world. Jonathan James was born on December 12, 1983, in Pinecrest Village in Miami-Dade County, in Florida. His passion for computers came from his early years, as he used to spend time on his father's computer for gaming. It wasn't long before his homemaker mother and programmer father suspected that his excessive screen time might prove detrimental. That's when they tried to pull him away from his activities, but he managed to convince them otherwise, claiming that his performance at school was unaffected. The login screen flickered. Jonathan's fingers moved across the keyboard, changing his grade from a C to an A in the county's educational system. His parents thought he was just gaming on his father's computer. They had no idea their son had just committed his first felony. From that moment, gaming became something far more dangerous. He's already gone from gaming to the C language, and his fascination only grew. This was the time when he began connecting with more hackers online, learning the ropes from within the community and its virtual back alleys, eventually giving himself the name Comrade. The name alone is an insight into the mind of this genius, collaborative and curious, meaning he wasn't driven by an ambition for money or power. He just wanted to learn. What started as an intellectual curiosity soon became something far more dangerous. In an anonymous interview, Jonathan once said, "It's intellectual, it stimulates my mind, it's a challenge." But challenges have a way of escalating. With this passion, the young teen had managed to teach himself how to work with advanced Unix documentation, batch scripts, and C language, like the back of his hand. During this time period, the internet was still unexplored for the most part, a vast uncharted network that brimmed with potential while simultaneously riddled with vulnerabilities. Even with crude firewalls and minimal oversight, nobody could have imagined that a teenager working alone from his bedroom could infiltrate the most sensitive networks in America. But Jonathan was about to prove them all wrong. By 1999, school networks were no longer enough. Jonathan's appetite for digital exploration demanded bigger targets. The first was a major telecom company, AT&T Bell South, where he only accessed the servers. His more serious intrusion, considered the first by many, was into the Defense Threat Reduction Agency, DTRA, which is a division of the United States Department of Defense. It's ironic that DTRA is responsible for analyzing threats to national security, encompassing biological and nuclear weapons as well. Jonathan installed a backdoor on a server in Dulles, Virginia, where he went on to deploy a tool designed to monitor data traveling across the network, called a sniffer program. Then, within only days, he had intercepted over 3,000 messages. Think usernames, passwords, and other sensitive pieces of info. The most chilling part, He maintained ongoing access to systems that monitored weapons of mass destruction. But even as federal alarms blared at the Defense Department, Comrade was already targeting something that could endanger lives in space. He had truly decided to do the unthinkable. Breaching NASA was in no way a walk in the park. As the world prepared for a new millennium, Jonathan focused his skills on one of the most technologically fortified agencies on Earth. NASA's Marshall Space Flight Center in Huntsville, Alabama, wasn't just another government facility. It controlled critical systems for the International Space Station. At its core were computers that managed life support systems, the very infrastructure keeping astronauts alive 200 miles above Earth. Jonathan was driven purely by curiosity, but what he was about to do crossed into territory where mistakes could kill. Now came the moment that would define Jonathan's legacy and seal his fate. The breach began with surgical precision. Comrade identified vulnerabilities in NASA's network architecture, digital cracks invisible to their security teams. No brute force attacks, no loud intrusions. He slipped through their defenses like a ghost and installed his sniffer program. Day after day, NASA employees unknowingly handed him their digital keys. Usernames and passwords flowed directly to his screen. High-ranking engineers, administrators, and mission controllers, he captured them all. Then he found what he was really after: the source code repository containing software that controlled International Space Station life support systems. The code that kept astronauts breathing. Jonathan downloaded $1.7 million worth of classified space technology without triggering a single alarm. But digital footprints are harder to hide than he realized. NASA's cybersecurity teams watched their screens in disbelief. System anomalies were cascading across their network. Someone had been inside for weeks. They made a decision that had never been made in NASA's history: complete network shutdown. For 3 weeks, NASA engineers worked around the clock while federal investigators combed through digital evidence. Operations at Marshall Space Flight Center stopped. Every system had to be checked, every log analyzed, every compromise mapped. The direct costs hit $41,000, but the real damage was to their confidence. When they discovered the intruder's profile, the shock was absolute. They weren't hunting a foreign intelligence service or a sophisticated criminal organization. They were looking for a high school sophomore with a dial-up internet connection. If you're finding this story as incredible as we are, make sure you hit that like button and subscribe for more unbelievable true crime stories from the digital world. Turn on notifications so you never miss when we drop these deep dives into the cases that changed everything. Jonathan operated with basic equipment, off-the-shelf computers, a home internet connection, and a mind that understood systems most security professionals couldn't comprehend. His breach marked a watershed moment. For the first time, the US government confronted a terrifying reality. America's most classified digital assets weren't just vulnerable to foreign operatives, but to teenagers with curiosity and modems. Cybersecurity experts began asking haunting questions. If a 15-year-old could compromise space systems that protect human life, what could hostile nations accomplish? Meanwhile, Jonathan remained silent. No forum posts, no screenshots, no claims of credit. When eventually asked why he did it, his response was chilling in its simplicity. I was just looking around, playing around. What was fun for me was a challenge to see what I could pull off. But the code he downloaded wasn't a game. It controlled real machines supporting real astronauts in the vacuum of space. What if he had modified it? What if a bug corrupted the download? What if life support had failed? NASA and the Department of Justice refused to leave those questions unanswered.
Hey, sorry to interrupt your video, but I've got a quick question. Are you interested in building a career in ethical hacking? We've partnered with EC Council to bring you the Certified Ethical Hacker, or CEH Masterclass, and it's the perfect place to start. In this course, you'll learn step-by-step how to think and act like a hacker so you can protect organizations from cyber threats. You'll gain hands-on experience with industry-standard hacking tools such as Nmap, Wireshark, Metasploit, Burp Suite, John the Ripper, Nikto, AirCrackNG, and many others. Master ethical hacking with AI-driven techniques to enhance your skills and always stay a step ahead. You'll explore techniques used in footprinting, scanning, enumeration, system hacking, malware analysis, sniffing, social engineering, and more. You'll also dive into advanced topics like web application attacks, wireless network security, cryptography, cloud security, and penetration testing methodology. Everything you need to pass the CEH certification exam and become a skilled ethical hacker. The CEH certification is a globally respected credential that validates your ability to identify and fix security vulnerabilities in networks and systems. It's ideal for anyone looking to become an ethical hacker, penetration tester, security analyst, or cybersecurity consultant. Cybersecurity is one of the fastest growing fields in tech, and ethical hackers are in huge demand. In fact, according to EC Council, the demand for ethical hackers has grown by over 40% in the past year alone, with penetration testing jobs being among the top 5 fastest growing roles in cybersecurity. Organizations across finance, healthcare, government, and tech are actively hiring CEH certified professionals to help defend against cyber threats. CEH certified professionals earn anywhere from $95,000 to $150,000 per year, and experienced professionals with advanced skills can earn $160,000 to over $200,000 annually, according to Glassdoor, PayScale, and CyberSeek. If you're ready to launch a high-impact, high-paying career in cybersecurity, this course is for you. We placed a link to the CEH course in the description area of this video. Enroll today and take the first step toward becoming a certified ethical hacker. Now, back to the video.
But the damage went far deeper than stolen software or financial losses. The act was, of course, about more than just stolen software. It was about the collapse of trust in systems that were assumed to be invulnerable. Jonathan James, with a teenager's sense of invincibility and a hacker's mindset, had demonstrated that the digital walls protecting America's most prized technological institutions were far more brittle than anyone imagined. And once those walls were cracked, no one could pretend they were safe again. From the authorities and NASA's point of view, the walls had been breached and the alarms had finally been rung. NASA's digital forensics team began the hunt. Working with federal cybersecurity specialists, they followed a trail of digital breadcrumbs through network logs and authentication records. Every click, every download, every command left traces. The sniffer program's Comrade installed had digital signatures. Metadata from stolen files pointed toward their destination. The trail led to Florida, to an IP address registered in Pinecrest, a quiet Miami suburb, to a house where a teenager lived with his parents. The investigators' disbelief was absolute. After weeks of analysis, after assuming they were tracking a sophisticated adversary, the evidence pointed to a high school student. By January 2000, a joint federal task force had probable cause to act. But this wasn't just about making an arrest. They wanted to send a message that would echo through every chat room and hacker forum in America. The carefully planned federal operation would shatter Jonathan's world in minutes. January 26, 2000. Federal agents executed a coordinated raid on James's family home. They seized computers, hard drives, and any device capable of storing digital evidence. The forensic analysis confirmed what investigators suspected. Jonathan had accessed NASA's most sensitive systems, but he hadn't destroyed anything or planted malicious code. What stunned the federal agents wasn't the evidence, it was Jonathan's reaction. No panic, no denials, no teenage bravado. He calmly explained his actions with the matter-of-fact confidence of someone who viewed computer systems as puzzles to be solved. To him, firewalls were speed bumps, not barriers. Jonathan admitted everything. He told investigators he never intended to cause harm. He was simply exploring. learning and testing the boundaries of what was possible. But federal prosecutors couldn't treat intellectual curiosity as a defense. The teenagers' digital expedition had compromised systems protecting human life in space. The evidence was overwhelming. The methods were clear. But prosecuting a 15-year-old who had just outsmarted NASA presented unprecedented challenges. Federal prosecutors, however, couldn't treat it as a learning experience. The breach had, after all, caused real damage, however indirectly. The shutdown had affected real operations, and the stolen code controlled systems that protected human lives in space. James was taken into custody. But instead of facing charges as an adult, he was charged as a juvenile, largely because of his age and the fact that, undoubtedly, no permanent damage had occurred. But that certainly didn't mean the consequences were light. Jonathan was placed under house arrest for 6 months, prohibited from using computers recreationally, and required to write formal letters of apology to NASA and the Department of Defense. Then, he was also placed on probation until his 18th birthday. Sure, the restrictions were strict, but they fell short of jail time. Yet, even that sentence would not go uninterrupted. Sometime later, Jonathan violated his probation after testing positive for drug use, and that unfortunate misstep triggered a harsher response. Federal authorities had zero tolerance for slip-ups, clearly. So, the teen was flown to a federal correctional facility in Alabama, where he served 6 months. For a teenager whose greatest crime had been committed from behind a keyboard, the contrast was sharp. In just over a year, Jonathan had gone from a kid curious about how systems worked to a federal prisoner wearing a uniform in a secure facility. What baffled many observers at the time was how far ahead of his time this young prodigy really was. At just 15, Jonathan James had managed to outwit seasoned engineers, bypass federal security, and access 2 of the most sensitive systems in the United States government. The government wasn't finished with Jonathan James. His case would become a landmark in cybercrime prosecution. In a 2000 press release issued by the Department of Justice, the case was described as a message to hackers that age would not shield them from accountability. Attorney General Janet Reno framed it bluntly. Breaking into someone else's property, whether it's a robbery or a computer intrusion, is a serious crime, she said. We take computer intrusion seriously. But for those who knew Jonathan, or maybe studied his case, there was always nuance to be explored. The boy hadn't profited from his breach, nor had he crashed systems or sold the stolen software. He didn't even broadcast his achievement online. Jonathan had done it alone, silently, and without seeking recognition. And that would have been the end of it, really, except that his name ended up resurfacing nearly a decade later. But the past has a way of returning when you least expect it. It was 2008 when retail giant TJX, the parent company of TJ Maxx and Marshalls, announced that they had a massive data breach. Tens of millions of credit and debit card numbers had been compromised in what was, at the time, the largest known computer intrusion involving identity theft.
Largest data breach in U.S. history is getting even larger tonight. The Wall Street Journal report says as many as 200 million customer records were stolen from Framingham-based TJX, which is the parent company of TJ Maxx and Marshalls. And now a local company is telling us that it actually warned TJX it was vulnerable to hackers. Warnings, they say, fell on deaf ears.
The breach had actually begun years earlier, and the method was eerily familiar, sniffing unsecured data flowing across a network. Federal investigators zeroed in on a group of sophisticated hackers. The name at the center of the conspiracy was Albert Gonzalez, a former Secret Service informant turned black hat hacker. His crew, under names like Shadow Crew and Operation Get Rich or Die Tryin', had pulled off cyber heists that totally dwarfed anything seen before. They didn't just break into companies, they built systems to steal data continuously, then package and sell it on the black market. Somewhere in the investigation, a faint line was drawn back to Jonathan James. It's true the FBI never accused him directly of participating in the TJX hack, but his name came up. In part, this was because Gonzalez and James were known to move in similar circles, or maybe law enforcement was looking for every possible angle. But for investigators trying to connect the dots, Jonathan's past made him a person of interest. In later interviews, those close to James said the pressure was suffocating. He had always carried the weight of his past, but now he was being pulled into something much darker. He maintained that he had nothing to do with the TJX case, and for all available evidence, there's no proof to actually prove anything otherwise. What came to harm this young tech genius was, somehow, his own achievements. He'd proven that a teenager could shake institutions. Basically, firewalls and passwords were only as strong as the minds defending them, and that the digital world, for all its layers of security, is easily harmed by a determined hacker. In the months following the TJX investigation's sweep, Jonathan tried to hold on, even as he developed depression. Though he wasn't a suspect officially, he wasn't a simple bystander either. For Jonathan, that was devastating. On May 18th, Jonathan James was found not breathing in his home from a self-inflicted wound. He left behind a letter. He stated he had nothing to do with the TJX hack. Heartbreakingly, he also wrote that he believed the justice system was no longer interested in fairness, that if the government wanted a conviction, they would get it. "I honestly had nothing to do with TJX," he wrote. "I have no faith in the justice system." He was just 24. Jonathan's death marked the end of a life, but the beginning of a reckoning with what his story truly meant. Jonathan's death sent shockwaves through the cybersecurity world. Here was a prodigy who had never used his skills for profit, never sold stolen data, never harmed anyone. He was simply a curious teenager who saw digital barriers as intellectual challenges, not criminal opportunities. Today, what Jonathan accomplished alone in his bedroom requires entire nation-state teams. Russian hackers target power grids, Chinese operatives steal aerospace secrets, North Korean cybercriminals attack hospitals. Yet the fundamental lesson Jonathan taught remains unchanged. No system is truly secure if the attacker is determined enough. Jonathan James, America's first juvenile charged with cybercrime, proved that curiosity and code can be more dangerous than any weapon. He forced the world's most powerful institutions to confront their vulnerabilities. His legacy isn't a cautionary tale about the dangers of hacking, it's a reminder that in the digital age, the greatest threats often come from the most unexpected places. The boy who hacked NASA showed us that the future belongs to those who understand that in cyberspace, there are no locked doors, only doors waiting for someone smart enough to find the key. Jonathan's story raises questions that haunt us today. Was he a criminal mastermind or a curious kid who went too far? Could his tragic end have been prevented if society had found a way to channel his genius instead of punishing it? In an age where teenagers routinely discover vulnerabilities that governments miss, where does curiosity end and crime begin? And most chilling of all, how many more Jonathan James are out there right now, sitting in their bedrooms, deciding whether to use their skills to protect the world or expose its weaknesses? What do you think? Was Jonathan James a victim of a system that couldn't understand his generation's relationship with technology? Or did his actions justify the consequences? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. If stories like this fascinate you as much as they do us, make sure you're subscribed and hit that notification bell. We're constantly uncovering the most incredible true stories from the digital underground. Cases that changed how we think about technology, privacy, and power. Until next time, remember, in the digital age, the most dangerous weapon might just be curiosity itself.